we shoot in Hollywood, as you know, having been here, I ask people a lot, if you were going to write a script for the rest of your life, what would you want it to be? You know what you're living, you know what you're suffering, but if you were just king or queen of the forest and you could write the script for the rest of your life, what would it be? And it is very sad to see that they have a really difficult time envisioning being the star in their own life. Who's going to star in your life if it's not you? And they really have a hard time putting together a vision where they're the star in their own life.
Because nobody has ever asked them that. Nobody has ever said, you are the protagonist of your own life. How would you like this story to go? Most people have never thought about their own lives that way. They don't realize how much agency they actually have. And I think that's one of the most empowering things about asking yourself these questions. In my TED Talk, I get up on the stage and I say, we're all going to die. That's something that I say to people. And I find that it really motivates people to know that life has 100% mortality rate. It's not for other people. Every single one of us is going to die. What do you want to do with your time here? And I think when people are really aware of that, not in a morbid way, but in a way that feels like I need to live with intentionality. When I wake up every day, am I living with intention? Am I living the kind of life that aligns with my values, that aligns with the kind of life I want to have? And if I'm not, what can I do differently? And what's keeping me from doing that?
I have this big ruler that's like 30 feet long and a foot wide that I roll out on stage sometimes, and it goes from 0 to 83 because that's kind of the life expectancy. I oftentimes will get somebody up to go stand on their age and say, okay, look over your shoulder, see how much is behind you. And if they're like 65 years old, they look over their shoulder and the 65 years behind them, now look ahead. And there's like this much ahead of them, like 2 feet ahead of them and 20 feet behind them. They're like, oh my God, you need to be who you are on purpose. You've got this much time left. How do you want to spend it? And it's astounding to me how that visual representation wakes people up sometimes when they go, oh my God. I mean, I've been a pilot since I was 16. I say one of the things that pilots have no use for is runway behind them. And and you're standing here, you got all this runway behind you and this little bit ahead of you, and you don't know how much of that's going to be quality. You've got 20 years ahead of you, but is all of that going to be useful? Are you going to be healthy and vibrant all that time? It really does wake people up sometimes. You've got to be who you are on purpose. I love that you talk to people about that and challenge them to write this up, figure out how they want to be in a new narrative and do what they want to do. And it's not about abandoning their lives. You don't have to leave everything. You just change the way you are. You're not going to drop your kids off at the mall and say, I want a new life and just leave them there. But you can do it differently within the confines of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a woman that I write about in the book who is about to turn 70 and feels like that, kind of the runway is behind her and she doesn't know what she can change at this point. And she goes through extraordinary change. So I think it's never too late to change. And I feel like it's being really aware of how we're living our lives is important at any age. It's not just, oh, let's look at the runway behind us. I think, we should be teaching that to our kids. Live with intention, be clear about what you want, who you are, what is authentic to you, the kinds of relationships you want to have with others, the kind of relationship you want to have to yourself. That's important for all of us. And that's what I think you and I are both trying to do in our work.
Yeah. And I've hit 70. I guess that's really old when I was 30. It was even old when I was 50. And now it's like, it's just a number now because I'm starting some whole new things in my life. It's never too late. However much time you have, You want to make the most of it. I love the way you approach this, and I love the fact that you don't give people the answer, you lead them to discovery. You lead them to finding it by asking themselves the questions. Because let's face it, you and I might figure this out in the first hour. We can tell them it doesn't stick, but if they discover it, they'll never forget it. But they've got to discover it.
Well, absolutely. I also feel like people have the answers. They just don't necessarily have access to them. And our job is to help them access the answers that they already have.
Coming out of this pandemic, and please God that we're coming out of it, and people are coming out of this quarantine, we're seeing spikes in depression, anxiety, loneliness with our kids. We're seeing adults that are intimidated by what they used to take for granted in terms of social interaction and the competition of career. I think people thought when the quarantine was lifted, it was going to be like that scene from Greece when it was the last day of school and those doors flew open and they all ran out into the carnival and everybody was dancing and singing like, oh, it's over, we're free. And it hasn't been that way at all. A lot of people are feeling trepidation and resisting a little bit, having fear, getting back into things that once was like falling off a log. What do you think people need to say to themselves as they transition back into a fully functioning world?
Well, I think that people have to realize that we've all been through a big change and everybody has reacted differently and everybody's had different circumstances. And I think we need to allow for that. I think that, we've talked about this collective trauma, but it's been different for different people. And so, and people are going to have different feelings about what it means to transition to something that feels more normal, but isn't quite normal because the pandemic, the COVID is still here. So I think it's really important just to allow for people to have their experiences, not judge people for what they're experiencing, not fight with them about, they need to feel a certain way because you feel a certain way. And just, I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's about we need to have more compassion for one another.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I want people to be patient with themselves as they go out there, and those first days or weeks are a little tough. Be patient. You'll get back to your stride. We'll find our way back. You haven't regressed to the point of no return. Just be patient with yourself. You'll get your legs back under you. We haven't passed the point of no return. I'm the incurable optimist, and I think that we will come back strong and we'll find our way back. So I agree. You say compassion, and I add patience, and I think if we had those two things, we'll get back where we need to be quickly and recognize that we're being role models for our children. Sometimes they may roll their eyes and not seem to listen, but they are always watching. So if we're careful about what we model for them, we'll be doing them a big favor.
Yeah, I always say too that, when I'm on stage and I'll say to people, who is the person that you talk to most in the course of your life? I'll say show of hands, is it your partner? Is it your child? Is it your best friend? Is it your sister? Whatever. I get lots of hands for those. But the person that we talk to most in the course of our lives is ourselves. And what we say to ourselves isn't always kind or true or useful. And so as we come out of this, I think we need to be especially aware of being kind to ourselves. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it useful? And if it's not, change the radio station. Find another way of talking to yourself. Because I think that the ways that we talk to ourselves and the voice in our head that is playing all the time has a huge impact on the quality of our lives in the day-to-day.